The year is 1348. Europe is under siege, not by armies or kings, but by an invisible enemy, the Black Death. In just a few short years, the plague will claim the lives of nearly half of Europe's population. Fear and despair spread faster than the disease itself. But from this moment of unimaginable suffering, a literary masterpiece was born. A book that captured the voices, laughter, and resilience of humanity at its darkest hour. That book was the Decameron, written by the Italian author Giovanni Boccaccio, set in the fictional Italian city of Bologna. The story follows a group of 7 young men and women who escape the plague-ridden city for a villa in the countryside. There they tell stories to pass the time, stories of love and loss, joy and sorrow, faith and doubt, all set against the backdrop of the deadly plague. And now, for the first time ever, you can hold this masterpiece in your hands. This is a new translation by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. So you're watching this story unfold and you think to yourself, who is this guy? Well, let me tell you, Giovanni Boccaccio was born in 1313 in Tuscany, Italy. He grew up in a time of cultural awakening. Trade was bringing wealth and new ideas to Italian cities. Art was flourishing, and humanism was putting an emphasis on the individual. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Boccaccio was fascinated not only by the elite, but also by common people, their struggles, their humor, and their desires. When the plague devastated Florence, Boccaccio witnessed its horrors firsthand. He saw how death stripped away social order, leaving people desperate, fearful, and sometimes selfish. But instead of writing a grim chronicle of despair, he created a book that celebrated life, love, and storytelling. And that book is the Decameron. It's a collection of 100 stories told by a group of friends who escaped the plague-ridden Florence for a villa outside the city. There they spent 10 days reading stories to each other, each one more fantastic than the last. So you're trapped in a plague-ridden city with only 10 days to live. What do? If you're Boccaccio's characters, you flee to a villa in the countryside, where you spend your days swimming in fountains, and your nights telling stories around the fire. That's right, the Decameron is at its best when it's framing device. Imagine 10 young Florentines, 7 women and 3 men, all escaping the plague together. They tell stories for 10 days, 1 story per person per day. And these stories, my friends, are a wild ride. One day the theme might be fortune, the next day trickery, love, or morality. Anything goes in this world of imagination, where storytelling is the ultimate escape. And that's why we tell stories. To keep our spirits up, to stay sane in a world that's gone crazy. So let's raise a glass to Boccaccio and his friends. May their stories continue to inspire us to find beauty and joy in even the darkest of times. So, what are these stories about? The beauty of the Decameron lies in its variety. Some tales are comic, poking fun at greedy merchants, corrupt priests, or foolish lovers. Others are tragic, showing the cost of betrayal or the fragility of life. Many are romantic, celebrating clever lovers who defy social norms. And a few are moral lessons, reminding readers of virtues like generosity, honesty, and courage. What makes the collection unique is its focus on ordinary people. Unlike the epic poems of knights and kings, Boccaccio's characters are bakers, merchants, servants, nuns, and tricksters. By putting common people at the center of his stories, he was able to capture a more realistic and often humorous picture of human life. And if that doesn't convince you to read it, I don't know what will. Here are some themes of the Decameron. Several themes run throughout the work, including the power of fortune. Characters in the story will rise and fall based on chance, luck, or clever thinking. One example of this is the young man who wins a bet with a demon. If he can stay awake for 40 days, he'll win. And if he loses, the demon will have his soul. But he stays awake for 41 days and wins his freedom. Another theme is the complexity of love. From innocent romance to passionate love affairs, love is shown as both an uplifting and dangerous force. One story follows a woman who falls in love with a handsome young man, but their love is forbidden. She is already married to another man, and her father is trying to set her up with a wealthy old man. The hypocrisy of authority is also a major theme. In one story, a priest is so overcome with lust that he gropes a young boy. He's called out for his behavior and is forced to confess his sins. Other stories show priests and friars being greedy, corrupt, and abusive. Finally, there's the resilience of humanity. Despite the plague raging outside the villa, these characters find ways to laugh, to be witty, and to survive. They tell stories about cunning servants, clever beggars, and heroic animals. Through their stories, they celebrate the strength of the human spirit. Why is the Decameron such a big deal? Well, first of all, it was revolutionary. When Boccaccio wrote it in the 14th century, he didn't write it in Latin, the language of the scholars. He wrote it in the vernacular Tuscan, the everyday language of his people. And that meant that instead of being confined to a small group of elite readers, his stories could now be enjoyed by everyone. In fact, that Tuscan dialect would later become the foundation of modern Italian. But that wasn't all. The Decameron was also groundbreaking because it was one of the first major works to feature ordinary people as protagonists. Not saints, nobles, or warriors. And these characters were like no others. They were witty and flawed and emotional and very human. So, in a way, the Decameron was one of the earliest masterpieces of Renaissance literature, paving the way for modern storytelling. And if you want to learn more about the Renaissance, including how to write a Renaissance essay, did you know that a book called The Decameron had an enormous influence on English literature? See, this was a collection of stories written by an Italian author named Boccaccio in the 14th century, and it was so popular that the English author Geoffrey Chaucer used it as inspiration for his own book, The Canterbury Tales. You've probably heard of it. It's the one where a group of pilgrims on their way to Canterbury tell stories to pass the time. Just like Boccaccio's storytellers, Chaucer's pilgrims tell tales, some funny, some serious, but all memorable. In fact, elements of Boccaccio's stories can be found throughout English literature, including in the works of William Shakespeare. For example, the tale of Isabella and Lorenzo inspired parts of Romeo and Juliet. So, if you like your stories with a side of influence, then be sure to check out both the Decameron and the Canterbury Tales. You won't be disappointed. Later writers across Europe admired the Decameron for its wit, realism, and boldness. It proved that literature could be both entertaining and deeply meaningful. Why was Boccaccio's The Decameron, a book about 100 stories told by 10 people in 14th century Italy, banned for 600 years? Well, because it was scandalous. See, this book was considered scandalous because it made fun of priests, monks, and nuns. And the church did not like it one bit. In fact, they tried to censor it, rewrite it, and even ban it altogether. But people still wanted to read it, and over the centuries, it became a bestseller. Just one problem, though. It was passed down from generation to generation, word of mouth, because it was banned. And so, over time, the stories changed and evolved, becoming more tame and less critical of the church. But hey, at least it survived. And today we can all enjoy The Decameron, a book about 100 stories that was once banned for making fun of the people in power. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Why does The Decameron still matter today? Because its themes are timeless. Love, fortune, deception, resilience, these are as relevant now as they were in the 14th century. The book shows that even in the face of death and despair, humans will always seek out joy, tell stories, and find ways to laugh. And who doesn't need a little bit of joy, laughter, and connection these days? During the COVID pandemic, The Decameron found new life as readers saw parallels between Boccaccio's world and their own. People were stuck at home, unable to work, just like the characters in the story. They were also dealing with death and grief, isolation and uncertainty about the future. Storytelling became a way to cope, to connect with others, and to endure. And what better story to tell than one about a group of friends who banded together to survive a plague? In the end, the Decameron is not just a collection of tales. It is a monument to the human spirit. Born in a time of death, it celebrates life. Written in a time of fear, it offers laughter and hope. Created in exile from the city, it built a timeless world of imagination. So when you think of the Renaissance, don't just picture art, cathedrals, or scholars. Picture 10 young people in a villa outside Florence. sharing 100 stories to keep their humanity alive while the world outside collapsed. There's something deeply powerful about a group of friends coming together to tell stories in the face of a deadly plague. It reminds us of the importance of community, of the power of storytelling, and above all, of the resilience of the human spirit. The Decameron is a story about stories, a celebration of humanity, and a reminder to never give up hope. If you enjoyed this exploration of Boccaccio's masterpiece, give this video a thumbs up, share it with your fellow history and literature lovers, and subscribe for more. Because just like those storytellers in the villa, we're here to keep the stories alive. The year is 1348, and you find yourself in a small village in Italy. Life is hard. The Black Death has just killed millions, and the entire social order is in chaos. But you're young, and you have a good head on your shoulders. And as the saying goes, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, and so you decide to write a book. But what to write? Well, luckily for you, you have a friend named Giovanni Boccaccio who has written a book of 100 tales. And because you and your friends love stories, you decide to share them with the world. And that, my friends, is how we got Boccaccio's masterpiece, the Decameron. Now get out of here. I want you to go read the book.